All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to take a look at the exercises from last week in Futato Chapter 5. I didn't receive any messages for topics to cover in this conference, so I'll start here with the exercises. I may, if we have some time, take a look at the current lesson on the Qal Perfect verb in Lesson 6, and then we'll just kind of see if anybody has any questions from there. So, looking at the personal pronoun. Again, the reason why it's so important to know these personal pronouns, especially the first and second person ones, is because you're going to notice that part of these pronouns ends up in the verbal forms. So when Hebrew conjugates, is the word we use, when Hebrew conjugates a verb, puts it in either third person, first person, second person, masculine or singular, it changes the way the verb looks. It changes how it's spelled. And the spelling of that verb is going to be related to these pronouns. So, first one here, we'll just translate through. Shouldn't be too hard. You've got the answers with you, but I'll just go ahead and work through these. So, hu of, he is a father. We wouldn't say the father because there's no definite article here, but he, a father, or he father. He is a father. Next we have ata av. You, masculine singular, are a father. And you'll notice here when Hebrew has a predicate, what we call a verbless clause, I guess I should say, the word order is flexible. The actual subject in our English translation may be in a different order than the Hebrew is. Right here you see that I translate this as he is a father. Be careful because often you will see Hebrew have a different word order like we do in number 3 and number 4 here. Here, this would be a father am I. A father I. That means a father am I. But I wouldn't translate this into English as a father am I. That's not how we speak in English. We would say I am a father. We always put the predicate after the subject. The only exception to that is in English when we ask questions, the predicate will come first. But in English word order, the subject usually comes before the predicate. In a verbless clause in Hebrew, the predicate noun will actually often come before the subject pronoun. All right, so that's just something to be aware of. Number 3, av ani, I am a father. Number 4, aim he, she is a mother. Number 5, at aim, you are a mother. Number 6, am anochi, I am a mother. Number 7, hu, sus. Now here there's a couple ways that you could translate it. You could translate this as that is a horse, but we haven't learned that hu sometimes gets used as what's called a demonstrative pronoun. So you're going to translate this as it is a horse. You might be tempted to say he is a horse, which if the horse is male, then that's fine, and presumably it is when you have the masculine singular form here. But in English, it's more natural to say it is a horse. Number 8, haim susim. They are horses. Number 9, susot hena. They are, you could say mares here. They are horses feminine. Number 10, we have ata el. You are God or you are a God. Number 11, Elohim atem. You all are gods. Number 12, anachnu Elohim. We are gods. All right, so that's section A. Now we'll add in the definite article. Actually, this doesn't have the pronouns. This is just translating the difference between translating with or without the definite article. So number 1, we have yom. Yom is day, or it may be a day. Number 2, we have Hayom. Hayom is the day, with the definite article here. He patach dagesh. It's also important to note that Hayom is actually the way that Hebrew will say the word today. If Hebrew wants to say today, it will say Hayom. I know that Hayom literally means the day, but that's often the word that gets used to mean today. I'm not saying you need to translate it as today, I just want you to keep that in your mind. Number 3, we have Elohim. Elohim would be God, or it could be gods, depending on the referent, because this is a plural form, but the meaning may be plural or singular. Number 4 may either be the God or the gods, again, depending on the meaning. It is a plural form, but Elohim sometimes is singular in its referent or meaning. Number 5, we have Habbat. Habbat would be the daughter. Number 6, Bat would be daughter or a daughter. Number 7, we have Hamelech. Hamelech is the king. Number 8, Melech is just king or a king. Number 9, we have Yad. Yad is hand or a hand. Number 10, Hayad would be the hand. Number 11, Achot would be sister, but I need to double check and see what the plural form of brother is. It might be Achim, but let's just check that real quick. All right, so we're looking for the plural form. It is Achim. Okay, that's good to know. The question then becomes, how would you say sisters? Because if Achot is sister, then how would you make it plural? Well, we'll come down here to Achot, and we'll look for the plural form. And it actually doesn't list one, I don't think. Feminine of Ach, construct form, suffixed form, plural. Oh, here we go, Achot. Okay, so it is the same. Achot, feminine singular, is here. Sometimes you may get Achayot for the, let's see, it says this is a theoretical form. And this is a theoretical form. So neither of these occur in the Hebrew Bible. It's just saying if you wanted to make it plural, you could either do Achot, which is the same form, or you could say Achayot. So that's good to know. All right, let's go back to our exercises. Number 11, again, Achot would be sister or a sister. Potentially it could mean sisters. It would not mean a sisters, because a in English only gets used with singular words. So you could say sisters if this were a plural form, but what would be another way to indicate plural but keep it indefinite? In English, we don't use an article for the plural, indefinite plural. We use an adjective, and that adjective is some. So you could say some sisters. That would be indefinite and plural. But you don't need to translate an indefinite plural noun in Hebrew with the English adjective some. You don't need to. That's just an option that may help you come out with a more natural English translation. All right, number 12, we have Ir. Ir is the word for city or town, and Ha'ir would be the city or the town. Again, Ir could be a town or a city as well. Number 14, we have Hadavar. Hadavar is the word. Davar is word or matter or thing or a thing. Hadavar could be the thing or the matter or the issue, something like that. All right, so that's section B. Then we go to F. We've got some more translations here. So number 1, we have Anochi Av, I am a father. Number 2, Ha'av Anochi, I am the father. Number 3, we have Atah Hamelech, you are the king. Number 4, Hamilchama he, she, or I'm sorry, it wouldn't be she because Hamilchama, this would be battle. So it is the battle. It's a little weird in English. We don't really say it is the battle, but he Hamilchama, this is a situation where we would not use she here, because in English we wouldn't refer to a battle as she. We would refer to it as it. It is the battle. Number 5, Hena Susot. They are horses or they are mares. Number 6, this is just a verb. This doesn't have a pronoun or anything. This is Zachar, he remembered. And it's important to remember that when you are translating vocabulary words, you need to actually what have I done? What have I done? You need to actually translate them and not just give the gloss from your vocabulary list. On the quizzes, when you are presented with the lexical form or the vocabulary list form, I am very flexible and lenient on how you quote-unquote translate it. But understand that if you see Zachar and you put remember or to remember, that is not translating. That's just glossing the verb with the English. All right? So if you're going to translate this, you would say either remembered, because maybe you don't make the subject explicit, or you would say he remembered. Number 7, we have he haaretz. Here you would say it is the land. Again, haaretz is feminine, even though it doesn't look feminine. But we wouldn't say she is the land because we don't describe land with she in English. We would just say it is the land. Number 8, we have Habbat at, you, feminine singular, are the daughter. Number 9, Shalach. Shalach means he sent, or it can mean, I think, he stretched out. Number 10, Elim atem, you all are gods. Number 11, Natan, he gave. And number 12, Kaved, it was heavy, or he was heavy, or he is heavy. These stative verbs, again, you know that Kaved is stative because it doesn't have the kametz patach pattern that you're used to. It has kametz serre. And stative verbs, this second vowel can either be patach, serre, or holam. So when you see kaved, you know that this is a stative verb. And stative verbs can often translate into English with the present tense, even when they're in the perfect conjugation. All right, that's all of our exercises for last week. Let's go ahead and work through this translation from the Hebrew Bible here and just practice reading, because the more we learn about verbs, the more we're going to want to practice our sentences. So we'll just read through here and then I will translate. Vayehi ki yashav hamelech bebeto va'adonai heniach lo misaviv mikol oyevav. Let's stop there and read through it. So Vayehi, this is the way that Hebrew may start a sentence of past tense narrative. So this is setting the scene in the past. So it happened that the king dwelt in his house, and Adonai, Yahweh, the Lord, here this is an important note in your text. This is talking about how you can translate this divine name. You're welcome to translate it, as far as I'm concerned, either as the Lord or as Adonai which isn't really translation, but it's a special word, or even Yahweh if you prefer. I'm not going to take Jehovah as a translation of this, because even though I do take Yahweh or Adonai, which aren't translations either, Jehovah has a lot of problems with it as far as Hebrew goes. It's not even a good transliteration of the Hebrew. Jehovah confuses the vowel markings and the consonants as referring to the same word. Again, we can talk more about that later, but if you're going to quote-unquote translate the divine name, you should use either Yahweh or the Lord or Adonai. And Adonai, Heiniach, so this is a particular verb form. I believe this means the Lord gave rest to him, or let him rest from the surrounding from his enemies. So from the enemies that surrounded him. Vayomer Hamelech el. Vayomer Hamelech el Natan. That confused me there because Natan looks like our verb Natan. You can see the verb has a patach. This has a kametz. So Natan here is the word or the name Nathan. Vayomer Hamelech el Natan Hanavi. So this is, and he said, who said? The king. The king said, El to. This is not El, the word for God. This is El. This is a preposition that means to or toward. The king said to Natan, and you'll see here as well, in English, our sentences always have almost always have the subject first and then the predicate. In Hebrew, it's very common to start with the verb first and then give the explicit subject. So the king said to Nathan Hanavi, the prophet, Re'e na anochi yoshev bavet arazim. Okay, so re'eh, this is a particular form of the verb to read, and this looks like in context this is probably the imperative form. Na here is a particular particle that gets used in expressions of desire or wish. Here you can translate it either as please or somehow maybe marking the emphasis of the request. So something like, please read, and then anochi, please look, please see. Ra'ah sometimes gets used as read. Well, not often. I think that probably Kodara gets used as read more often than Ra'ah. But Ra'ah means to see or to look at. Please look. I am dwelling. So Yoshev, this is a type of adjective called a participle. It's basically where you use a verb as an adjective. So dwell is a verb, but here it's describing I. I am. What state do I exist in? The state of dwelling. I know this sounds like a verb, but it's basically saying, see me dwelling. It is being used. It is being used predicatively here. That's something we'll talk about when we get into adjectives in lesson 10. But the translation basically is going to be, I am dwelling in a house, arazim. Now, I do not remember what arazim, this is what we refer to as a construct. So we'll learn that in lessons 12 and 13. I'm dwelling in the house of arazim, and Aron Ha-Elohim. Aron here, this is the ark of God. I know it looks like the God, but here this is implied the God of Israel or the God of us. And the ark of the God or our God or the ark of God, Yoshev. Again, same form. This one just happens to have the Holam Vav. This one has the Holam. The ark of God is dwelling in the midst of Hi Ri'ah. Trying to think of what Hi Ri'ah is. All right, so two words I want to look up are Arazim and Hi Ri'ah. And this will be a good lesson in how to use your lexicon. So here, when I look at Arazim, the first thing that I notice is that I've got a Hirik Yod Mem suffix. All right, so this is probably not the lexical form. This is not the form that's going to show up in the dictionary. This is probably the masculine plural form. And so if I take off the Hirik Yod Mem, I'm left with Araz, but this Hatef Patach, this is only reduced, most likely, because the Hirik Yod Mem was added to the end. So this was probably like a short vowel. Actually, this is probably a long vowel, and then this may have been a short vowel. But what we're going to look up in the dictionary, in our lexicon, is Aleph, Resh, Zayin. That's what we're going to focus on, and then we'll see what we find. So let's go over here to our lexicon. We're in Aleph. Now we need Aleph, Resh. So here we have Aleph, Chet, Aleph, Chet, Aleph, Kaf, Aleph Samek, Aleph Pei, Aleph Tzadeh, Aleph Resh. All right, and you can see that it goes from Aleph Tzadeh to Aleph Resh. Now here we have Aleph Resh Gimel, but we need Aleph Resh Zayin. So here we go, Aleph Resh Gimel to Aleph Resh Yod. This is the one we want. All right, and then within Aleph Resh Gimel, Gimel, Dalet, Aleph Resh Dalet, 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 Aleph Resh Hey. I wonder if this is a typo. Oh no, I'm sorry, Zayin comes after Hey. That's why it's important to know your alphabet well. Okay, so Vav Zayin. So we got Aleph Resh Vav, 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 Zayin. Erez, okay? So this is the noun we want. And this is a segalit as well. So let's click on this. Erez means it refers to a kind of tree and its wood from Lebanon. So this is probably the way that most translations are going to translate this phrase is I am living in the house of cedar or in a house of cedar. A house built with cedars, actually, plural here. That's probably how that would be read, or translated rather into English. All right, and then the ark of God dwells in the midst of, and here we're going to look up this word. So again, the first thing I notice here is the Hey Patach, and our footnote tells us that when the definite article is added to a word beginning with a Yod Shavah, the strong dagesh is not added. All right, so this is the definite article added to a Yod Shavah, Resh, Hirik Yod, Ayin, and then a Kametz Hey. So what I'm definitely going to start looking for in my lexicon is Yod Resh. Hirik Yod may pop up inside of certain words, but since this is a noun, that's probably part of the lexical form as well. So I want Yod, Resh, Yod, Ayin. And it may have a Hey on the end as well. But let's look that up. Yod, Resh, Yod, Ayin. So come back over here to our lexicon. We need to close Aleph. We need to go to Yod. And we want Yod, Resh. Here we go. But we want Yod, Resh, Yod. Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod. So Yod is after Vav, Yod, Resh, Yod, and then we need Ayin. So Yod, Resh, Yod, Hey, Yod, Resh, Yod, Ayin will come after this. Ayin, Pei, Sade, Kof, but it'll come before Kof. So this is the one that we want. All right, so we have Yod, Resh, Yod, Ayin, and this is it, Ayin, Hey. Yeria, okay? So this, Yeria, is the word for tent fabric, often made of goat hair apparently, or at least in Exodus 26, and other material for the tabernacle, or you could say a tent, more generally. So what this is saying is the Ark of God dwells within, or in the midst of, within the goat hair, within a tent, within the fabrics made for a tent. So I'm dwelling in a house of cedar, but the Ark of God is dwelling within goat hair. All right, so you can guess kind of the context of this here. All right, that'll wrap it up for today. Like I said, I don't have any other questions. Actually, no, I'm gonna take a quick look over here at the Qal Perfect, because I want to make sure that you guys see the significance of how the pronouns relate to the verb forms. So in Hebrew, the most common form is the third, I should say just the third person form. That occurs much more frequently than second or first. And it's also the simplest form of the verb. And so when Hebrew orders out the form of the verb, it starts with the masculine, it starts with the third person. Third person masculine singular, then third person feminine singular, and then second person masculine singular, and then second feminine singular, first person. Now, it doesn't have first masculine singular and first feminine singular, because whether it's masculine or feminine, the same form gets used. It uses a common form for both. They both share one form. So that's why it's only written here once. Then when you get into the plural, the third person no longer has a distinction between masculine and feminine. The same form in the third person plural gets used, whether it's masculine or feminine. So there's only one form here. In the second form, the masculine plural uses this, the feminine plural uses this. And then finally in the first person plural, again, one common form gets used, whether it's feminine or masculine. So what I want you to pay attention to, and Futato does a good job of pointing this out. This doesn't really apply to the third person, but when you get into the second and first person, I want you to see these pronouns. He has highlighted the part of the pronoun that carries over to the verb. So again, the verb itself is Qal. Now when you add more vowels to a Hebrew word, sometimes the vowels are going to shift around to make more room, because Hebrew words really like to stay as few syllables as possible. Like they'll want to stay to 2 syllables if they can. So Qal is 2 syllables, but when we add the comets hey to the end, if we keep the comets patach and the comets hey, how many full vowels do we have here? That's 3 full vowels, so now we've got 3 syllables. So what Hebrew's going to do here is it's actually going to reduce the patach to a shavah here. Now this is a vocal shavah because the vowel that precedes it is not short, so this is a vocal shavah. But instead of katala, we get katala. All right, katla sounds a lot closer to 2 syllables than to 3, and so that's why it's trying to kind of condense this down to make room for the extra air that you need to pronounce this vowel. All right, so then when we add, and so this is a pattern that you'll notice here. When we add a vowel, when we add a suffix that begins with a vowel, the second root letter, its vowel is going to reduce. But when we add a suffix that begins with a consonant, ta here, we don't get a reduction. All right? So this will be 3 syllables. And it's really hard to have 2 full syllables before the accented syllable. So Hebrew kind of messes around here a little bit, and what happens is it actually pulls the accent back here to this tet, to the second root letter. So instead of katalta, it's katalta. And when you have katalta, it's easier to say katalta than katalta. But what we've done is we've taken the tav kametz of the 2ms pronoun, and we've just stuck it on the end of this verb. Katalta has the ta of ata. Katalta has the ta of ata. Right? And so that's how when you see this tav kametz ending on your 2ms form, that's when you will note that it is related to the 2ms pronoun. All right? So you can see here, this is where our, let me pull up our Dagesh flowchart real quick. All right, so here in the Dagesh flowchart, the question we ask right here, is the Dagesh in the first or last letter of a word? We will frequently see, especially in a Begad Kafat letter, which is what we're talking about here, and honestly only in a Begad Kafat letter, when a Begad Kafat letter begins a word, it's going to have a Dagesh, almost always. And so the first letter should be no surprise. Is the Dagesh in the first letter? Yes, then it's weak. But this also happens in the last letter, and that's what we see here in this in these forms, actually. That's what we see here in the katalta and the katalt. And we saw it here as well in at. But here you can see that we've just taken part of the pronoun and stuck it on the end of the verb. And that's how we distinguish between he killed and she killed. Is the difference here is we use this part of the pronoun, this part of the masculine pronoun, this part of the feminine pronoun. All right? And then for the 1CS, I know that the tav is not part of the pronoun, but the hirik yod is. All right, and that hirik yod on the end, that's what's going to remind you that you've got a 1CS here. So when you see katalti, again, when you add, we don't have to worry about it here in the 2FS form because we're not adding a vowel. We're not adding a vowel here. And so we don't have to change the vowels of the word. We don't have to change the accents. We just go from katal to, in the 2FS, we go to katalt. And because lamed and tav can blend together like that, alt, you don't need an extra syllable. You don't need an extra vowel. But when we get to this next one, katalti, again, we've got the situation where we're adding a suffix that begins with a consonant, and it does have a vowel, so it needs to shift the accent back to this second to last syllable. I mean, you could say that the 2FS shifts the accent back to this tet as well, but it's not the second to last syllable because there's still only this one vowel. It's still the final syllable. Ka, talt. It's still one syllable here. But when we add the consonantal suffix with a vowel in it, we've now got 3 vowels in this word, 3 full vowels. And so we don't want to say katalti, we want to say katalti. And that just makes it easier to pronounce. So that's why the 2MS form and the 1CS form, as well as the 1CP form, will actually have their accent on the second to last syllable. When we get to the third common plural, again, third person doesn't really borrow from the pronouns. I mean, you could maybe see the hey from he carried over here. You could maybe see the shurek, but there isn't really a shurek in the plural pronouns. So the third person, this pronoun carryover doesn't really work. You will you will come to understand that the shirk often indicates plurality. And it's often used for third person as well. So a holem vav often indicates third person masculine singular. A shirk often indicates third person plural. So those are patterns you will begin to pick up on, but at this point, these forms, the third person forms, aren't really related to the pronouns. But here, when we add this vowel suffix, again, we have the same thing that happened up in the 3FS. The tet is going to reduce its patach to a shavah to make room for this extra vowel, this extra syllable. And so instead of katalu, we get katalu. Then we add the two MPs. The 2MP suffix for atem, we just take the tem and we put it over here. And for attain, we just take the tain and we put it over here. Now, tain becomes 10 because we want this to be a short vowel, just like the segel up here. But again, you can tell the difference between the masculine plural and the feminine plural because the masculine plural will have the mem for masculine. And then the nun represents the feminine here. All right, so we get a little bit of a difference here in these forms as well. Now, what we've seen so far, there are basically three types of suffixes that get added to the verb, depending on what person, number, and gender it is. We have the vocalic suffix, that just means a vowel suffix, a suffix that begins with a vowel. That would be the comet's hay here. Or that would be the shurik here. Those are vocalic suffixes. They begin with a vowel. And in those suffixes, the R2 letter, the second root letter, is going to reduce its what we call theme vowel. It's going to reduce its theme vowel to a shavah to accommodate that extra vowel. But when we get to the consonantal suffixes, ta and ti, and the same thing will happen with nu, these are open consonantal suffixes. That is to say, they are a consonant and a vowel, and that vowel is left open. There's not another consonant closing the syllable. In that case, they don't reduce the R2 letter. Instead, they just shift the accent back to the second to last syllable. But here, when the 2MP and 2FP forms try to shift the accent mark back, the problem is these endings are so heavy. They've got two full consonants. They're closed. There's no air getting out. They're so heavy that they actually weigh the word down over here. And even though that accent tries to jump, it slides right back down here. So since the accent can't jump back on these, we have to reduce. But in this case, we're going to reduce the first letter. Okay, the first root letter's vowel. So we get the patach under the tet. I'm sorry, I'm only looking at these two. But we reduce the initial kamats to a shavah. And so we get katal tem, katal ten, and then finally with the 1CP form, again, this is an open consonantal, and so the accent can shift here. And so we get katalnu, and we don't have to reduce anything. Now, you've introduced yourself to the forms. It shouldn't take too much practice to begin recognizing them if you can connect these forms to their pronouns. That's why it was so important to memorize the pronouns well, to know the distinctive features of the pronouns. The second person singular pronouns look very similar, except the 2MS masculine has a tav kametz, and the 2FS has a tav shavah. Well, that's exactly the difference that makes its way onto the verb. The 1CS takes its Hirik Yod and moves it over to the verb. It does add a tav as well. The 3CP doesn't really have anything to borrow from the pronoun, but we use the shurik, which often indicates third plural. And then we get to the 2MP and 2FP, where we just take the tav segel mem, the tav and the nun, and we ship those over to the verb form. And then the 1CP anachnu, we take the nu and we put it on the end of the verb. And so you can see here that the verb form changes depending on what pronoun would go with it. If he killed, we can just leave it as the basic form. But if she killed, we're going to change it to make it clear that this is a feminine subject. If it's you masculine killed, then we're going to take the you masculine pronoun and grab this tav kametz and put it on the end. If it's you feminine who killed, we're going to take the ot, feminine singular pronoun, take this tav off of it and put it on the end. If it's I killed, then we're going to take the Hirik Yod of the I pronoun, put it on the end. If it's you masculine plural who killed, we're going to take the tem part of the atem pronoun and put it on the end of the verb. And if it's you feminine plural who killed, we're going to take the ten part of aten. We're going to put it on the end of the verb. And then finally, if it is we killed, we're going to take the nu of anachnu, we, and we're going to put that on the end of the verb. All right, so the thing that you want to keep in mind here is that there is a clear relationship between the pronouns in the second and first person and the form of the verb that you will conjugate. That said, it is very, very helpful if you can commit these to memory in a more automatic sort of way without having to think through. Your reading is going to be much quicker if you can recognize the form as soon as you see it. That's going to take some time. Okay, there's no real shortcut here. There are things you can do to improve that and maybe speed it up a little bit, but it's inevitable that this will take time. You're programming your brain, so it's not just an instantaneous sort of thing. So there's a couple things you can do to speed up the programming of your brain so that it more immediately recognizes these different forms. The first thing you can do, which is probably the least fun, is you can just write this chart out over and over and over and over again. And when I say write this chart out, you really only need to worry about, you only need to worry about this left column here. If you can just write this out over and over and over again, understanding that you're going third masculine singular, third feminine singular, second masculine singular, second feminine singular, first common singular. If you can understand which, so I would probably write this part out as well, the far right column and the far left column. But just write these out. Write them out, maybe write this chart out 10 times, and then wait 5 minutes, and then write it out another 10 times. And then after each set, so write it out 10 times, and then go back and check yourself and correct any mistakes that you made. Then, after you've written it out, wait 5 minutes, go back, write it out 10 more times. And maybe to just sort of prevent any mistakes, you could do something like this. Look it over, write it out once, check what you just wrote out, fix any errors. Write it out again, check and make sure there's no errors. And keep checking it until you get it written out where there were no errors. Once you've done that, then you don't need to keep checking it. But get it done 10 times, wait 5 minutes, do it another 10 times. Then wait 15 minutes, do it another 10 times. Then wait an hour. Do it another 10 times. And then wait, 4 hours. Do it another 10 times. Wait 12 hours. Do it another 10 times. Wait a day. Do it another 10 times. And what that's called is spaced repetition. What that's doing is it is allowing your brain to start forgetting it and then reminding your brain, hey, don't forget this. It's kind of like It's kind of like you're one of those employers who knows he's got a bad employee, so he watches him in the back office on the video camera, and he just waits for him to screw up, and then as soon as the employee does something he's not supposed to do, he goes out and corrects him. I'm not saying it's a good way of managing. I'm just saying that this is how you train your brain not to forget something. You write it out, wait for a period of time to where your brain starts to say, oh, okay, I guess we don't need this anymore, and then force your brain to use it again. And that tells your brain, oh, I guess we need this for more than 5 minutes. And then when you wait 15 minutes, oh, I guess we need this for more than 15 minutes. And then when you wait for an hour, oh, I guess we need this for more than an hour. And then when you wait for a day, your brain realizes, oh, I guess we need this for more than just a day. And then as you space that out, that's training your brain to move the information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. All right, like I said, that's not the most fun way to do it, but it can be pretty effective. Another way to do it is to create flashcards. So here you would create 9 flashcards, and what you would do is you would write these forms on the front, make sure that they are written perfectly, that they are spelled correctly, the vowels are correct. That's another thing. You really, 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 really want to memorize the vowels as part of this. The reason why is that if you don't memorize the vowels, you're not really going to know the difference between 2MS and 2FS, for example. Everything else you could probably figure out, but it's important to know the vowels here. If you get stuck on a quiz, if you get stuck in your reading, for sure focus on the consonants, because they will tell you a lot of information, and then just use the vowels to specify your options. So definitely when you're reading, when you're taking a quiz, focus first on the consonants. But when you're learning, when you're memorizing, try to memorize the vowels as well. That will help you so much if you include the vowels in here. It is more work, but you're going to be better when you're done. All right, so the first method was sort of the writing it out method. Second method would be flashcards, where you just write these forms on 9 different flashcards, you flip it over, and you would write out the parsing. So for this one, you would write Qal Perfect 3MS. For this one, Qal Perfect 3FS. For this one, Qal Perfect 2MS. I don't mind you, instead of writing out these whole words, I don't mind you just putting the suffixes on there so that you can keep the suffixes in your head, because obviously the first 3 letters are going to change when the verb changes. You know, if it's a Qal, you're not going to see a Kof, Tet, Lamed. You're going to see an Aleph, Kaf, Lamed. And so you're going to see a different series of letters here. But the reason why I encourage you to put the whole word on the front of the card is it is important for remembering the vowels. So you decide how you want to do it if you do flashcards, but do those flashcards and use that same spaced repetition to kind of, okay, so you'll review them, you know, maybe go through them a couple times, wait a minute, go through them a couple more times, wait 5 minutes, go through them a couple more times, wait 15 minutes, then an hour, then 4 hours, then 12 hours, then a day, then a couple days, then a week. Just sort of increasing the amount of time, increasing the interval between which you are reviewing, and that's going to train your brain to remember these long term. Another thing that can be helpful that you can do anywhere, you don't have to have pen and paper, you don't have to have your flashcards with you, is just sort of reciting these with a particular cadence that's easy to remember. And so if you can do it to a particular rhythm where it sounds the same every time, that will commit to your memory pretty easily. And that way, when you're looking at a particular form and you're not sure which it is, you can read the form, you can go through that in your head and see which one matches what you're looking at, and that will help you remember the order. So the way that I do that as I read through here is I would go Qal, Qala, Qatalta, Qatalt, Qatalti, Qatalu, Qataltem, Qatalten, Qatalnu. Qal, Qatala, Qal, Qatala, Katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. And so all together there, it's katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. And that may be way too fast right now, but even if you slow it down, katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. Maybe, I'm not saying grab a metronome, but, kind of keep a count in your head. Katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. You want to make sure that the accented syllable is on those snaps, on those clicks. Katal, katala, katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. Katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. All right, so again, that is probably the easiest way to do it. It takes the least effort, and you may feel the silliest of all three doing it that way. But I'm just trying to give you options for how to get this memorized and instantly recalled in your brain. You will have to get to a point where these are just, you see a form and you instantly recognize it. You could instantly parse it. If you don't nail that early on, the rest of the course is going to be difficult because you're going to be playing catch up with these verbs. So just spend this week, and next week is a relatively light lesson number 7. There's not a ton of new information, at least as far as forms and spelling goes. So spend the next couple weeks, this week and next week, really committing the time to memorizing these forms. It will pay off in the future.